Hey guys, welcome to another video. So lately I've been getting the same question over and over again, and that gave me an idea to make a video that's a little bit different than what I normally do. That question is, how do I make my live stream look good, and do I really need to buy a DSLR? Well, stay tuned so you can find out how to make your live stream look really good without having to break the bank. So first, let's start with how you'll look with your automatic settings for your webcam. There. This is probably what your live stream looks like. As you guys can see, everything's blurry, it looks blown out, it doesn't look that good. And I promise you, I'm actually using the exact same webcam. So, let's get started with the tutorial, and let me talk to you guys about a few simple rules and a few simple tweaks that'll help your live stream go from this...
It's more private, it's more snug, it's more super duper...
to this. Right? You just came to look at your work digitally now. Alright, let's talk about these rules. Rule number 1, you do not need an expensive camera to make your image look good. I know you've seen those live streamers that are using the most expensive DSLR, $10,000, $8,000. You don't need to have that in order to make your stream look half decent. Remember, your webcam is only a small portion of what your viewers are going to see, so you don't need to spend all that money on a really expensive camera when you're really not going to get full use out of it. Also remember that your settings can actually make your webcam look almost as good as a DSLR. Is it the same? No, but the budget is going to thank you later. Rule number 2, lighting. You need a lot of lighting in order to make your stream look better. The more lighting you have, the more you help your camera. The more you help your camera, the better the quality is going to look. Right now, everything looks really blurry, and that's because the camera is struggling to try to make my face pop while keeping everything else kind of visible. But you can see everything's really blown out and nothing looks interesting. So lighting is your friend. Remember, lighting. Rule number 3, background. You want to have an interesting background. If you can't afford a green screen, make sure that what people do see behind you is worth looking at. If it's just a plain wall, people aren't going to be very happy. It makes it look plain. It makes it look almost amateur. You don't really need to put anything fancy like my collection in the background, but if you light things properly, even a plain background can look pretty good. But don't ever forget the background. Rule number 4, settings. Do not forget to take your camera off automatic settings. That is what's going to make your camera look even better than what it can do automatically. So, knowing all these rules, let's get started. I'll show you one by one what each thing can actually do to help your stream look better. Alright guys, let's do this. Okay, we're actually going to skip ahead and start with rule number 4. Maybe it should have been rule number 1. Whatever, the order doesn't really matter. What matters is that you follow these rules. So let's go to rule number 4, which was settings. Settings are extremely important. Logitech, which is the webcam I'm using, but pretty much every webcam out there, tries to use automatic settings. And depending on how good your webcam is, some of them can be very good automatic settings. Some of them struggle really hard to get the automatic settings to look half decent. So let's open up our webcam settings. I'm actually using Streamlabs OBS, but if you're using OBS Studios, if you're using Stream Things, I don't know, any other stream app out there, sorry, I just use OBS, so I don't really know what else there is out there for you to use, but whatever you use, there should be webcam settings for you to play with. So let's open those up, and we're going to configure our video, and we should see here our Logitech settings. So the first thing you're going to notice is autofocus. Autofocus can be good if you're doing a vlog style video where you're going to be showing things off. Like how can I... Here, I've got a controller, and if I want the webcam to focus on it, I can get closer, and the webcam is struggling right now because I don't have good lighting. We'll get to that after. But the webcam will try to autofocus to this. The problem is that sometimes it will try to focus on things behind you, which will cause the camera to blur out suddenly. A lot of people don't know about this. Not all webcams have autofocus, but if yours does, turn it off. You don't want to see something like this happening in the middle of your stream because it can be extremely distracting. And if you're using something like a green screen, forget about it. You're going to have a lot of issues with green screen and autofocus. So turn it off. Focus yourself, and once you're focused, you're going to be good. quick tip for how to focus. You can actually zoom in. My suggestion is to zoom in somewhere on your face and work on the autofocus until you look crystal clear. I look pretty clear right now. The lighting doesn't help, but I look pretty clear. That's where you want to lock it. That's where you want to leave it. Then obviously zoom out because you don't want to be zoomed into such a beautiful face all the time. All right, let's move forward to the next setting, the advanced settings. Now this is probably what yours looks like. And this is where you're going to run into a lot of problems if you're using a Logitech webcam. Other ones might have a different setup, but they should have generally the same idea. First thing you want to do, turn off all the automatic settings. You don't want to deal with any automatic settings because when you do that, the webcam's trying really hard to digitally make things look better, and you don't want that to happen. I'll give you a bit of a breakdown of what each one of these things does because most people do use Logitech, so this may be the more common webcam to see. Again, if you see yours with a different brand, it might be slightly different, but some of the same features should still be there. So exposure. Exposure could also be called something like brightness, which this also has brightness, but other webcams may just call it brightness. They may also call it frame rate. That is something that's going to affect how the webcam actually takes in the light. So if you don't know how webcams work or cameras in general work, it's just a bunch of still pictures. Exposure, what it does is it allows the still picture to go slower to allow more light in. The upside is you get more light. The downside is you end up with a feature like this. If I turn it up and I move, look how blurry I am. See how it all blurs? The exposure is way too high, and it's causing the webcam to take slower pictures, which then causes me to move slower. Now, if I turn it down, the drawback is now I'm really dark, but if you look, I'm smooth when I move around. For the little bit that you can see, I'm smooth when I move around. So you always want to kind of balance the exposure out. Gain is the digital equivalent. So what it's doing is it's digitally trying to take the signal that it's getting and brighten it. But what ends up happening is you get a lot of these speckles. If you look at my shirt, or here, this arm. If you look at my shirt, the black isn't really black. There's a bunch of colored dots that are coming through. So you don't want to be able to see that, or you want to prevent that as much as possible. It is good because it allows the exposure to stay lower and the gain stays up so you can see more, but you want to get rid of some of those colors. So if I turn it down, there's no more speckles, but now you see the whole image is darker. So then you end up turning this up, and the image is still clear, but you get more blur. So you want to try to balance it as good as possible. So right now, just using my overhead light, let's see if I can get something half decent. And that should be okay. That is at least passable. It looks better than what it looked like a second ago. So this is what I've done. And if I go to automatic, look how much worse it looks. So settings can really save your life. Okay, so I've set the settings roughly where I like it. I did forget to turn off one feature a little bit ago, so you may notice a little bit of a color drop right now, which is what I'm about to talk about. So one of the other settings that you're going to be keeping in the back of your mind is you want to do some color correction. You never want to leave the color the way that it is because it looks pale, almost boring. So we're going to open up our filters. Ignore the other filters that I have on there. That's what I use for my own live stream. Face mask plugin is something that OBS Studio does where based on donations you can get like a face mask to pop on your webcam and people can donate to put masks on you. And image mask, it just has to do with the way that I've got my webcam set up. It's having to do with adding or subtracting parts of my webcam in order to add a design to my background. So if you look, when I turn this on, see the four corners disappear. When I turn it off, the four corners come back. So that's all that is. But color correction is what matters. So what you're going to want to do is actually go here to the plus sign. Let me move this back here. You're going to want to go down and you're going to look for color correction, which should be right there, color correction. So you're going to click that. I've already got it, so I'm just doing this to show you guys. And then once you have it up, the main thing you want to look at is contrast and saturation. Contrast, what it does is it makes the whites whiter and the blacks blacker. But if you go too far, you end up with an image that looks like this. And you don't want that because it messes with the colors. Honestly, my suggestion is to go up slightly. Maybe 0.08 on this program specifically. But just bump it up just a little bit to make the darks look a bit nicer and the whites look a little bit nicer. The most important one is saturation. You want to get the saturation up because if you look right here at my hat, my Mario hat. When I bring this up, it pops. Now you don't want to go too far because look at my face. I go all orange. So you obviously just want to go slightly. You want to give it just a bit, like a little kiss of saturation, which I don't want to mess with right now too much because we don't have the lighting, which is another step that we're going to deal with. But these are the things you need to look at in order to get everything right. Once we do all the other steps, I'll go back here and I'll show you all the settings that I use, and that way you guys can figure out what's going to work for you. All right, let's move on to a different rule. So now let's move on to lighting. Like I said, lighting is important. And when I was telling you guys earlier about the settings for the webcam, lighting is what's going to make everything pop. When I was talking about gain and exposure, that's all reliant on lighting. If you don't have enough lighting, you're going to have to push that gain up and you're going to get a lot of that speckling color, which is something you really, really want to avoid. So the first thing you want to do is get yourself a light, even if it's just one and you need it right in front of you so you can try to get the least shadows possible, yet get the most lighting on your face. Now, don't go out and buy a $500 light just because it's a $500 light and it's got all these bells and whistles. You don't need that. This is what I started my streams with. This is just a clamp light. It's something that I bought at Home Depot. It cost me $20 in Canada, which still isn't too much, and the light bulb itself was like $1 from the dollar store. What I like about this is the fact that you can physically clamp it onto things. So if you have like a post or you have something behind your desk that you can clamp this onto, it's perfect for lighting you. I still use these. I don't use them for my actual lighting, but I use it for one of my background lights, and I use them around the house all the time. So they're really cheap to get, and they're really, really important. So now I'm going to show you what it looks like if I mess with the settings, like I said, and I add one light. One light can make a huge difference. Also, turn off that light. You don't really need it, and that's just going to interfere with the rest of the lighting in the room, and it gives you less control. So I would suggest turning that off, unless you kind of want the background to be visible. So let's do that right now. There. As you guys can see, that's made all the world of a difference, and all I've done was turn off that light, turn on the light right behind the webcam, and fiddle with the settings a little bit, just to make the brightness work, because if I would have kept it the way that it was earlier, everything would have looked overblown because the camera was trying really hard to get lighting from that one light. This looks much better in my opinion. I look much more evenly lit, the background is darker, which makes me pop, which makes the viewer know that they need to watch me rather than my background. So that's just with one light. My suggestion is to use two, especially if you're going for those clamp lights like I showed you. You could easily get two and still not break the bank. Now the key is to actually have them coming from different angles. You don't want them from the same spot. You actually want to kind of fill your face with light. So let me turn on a second light and show you what difference this makes when I turn it on. Now I've got more even lighting on this side. It's actually filled out a lot nicer. Let me show you again. That's with it off, and that's with it on. So my face now looks more evenly lit. Things look to balance a little bit more. You always want to try to use two lights when possible, but if you're stuck with just one, take the one light and put it as close to the center of your screen as possible, or pretty much directly behind your webcam, because whatever your webcam sees will be lit by that light that's right behind the webcam. That's the best advice that I can give you when it comes to that, because if you have just one on the side, let me show you the difference. It actually can not look so good. So now look at all the shadows that are on this side of my face. You don't want that to happen. You want the light to be in the center, because in the center you're going to get much better lighting than if you get it from the side. So let's turn that one off. See, this looks much nicer. So that is number one for lighting. The two most important lights are the lights that light you. Everything else doesn't matter. Okay, so now the lighting looks the way that I normally have it on my streams. All I did was move the one light from behind the webcam over to the side. So now I actually have lights on the corners of my desk facing me, and that lights my face evenly on both sides. Let me show you stills of all the different ways that we lit the room in order for you to be able to decide what you like the best. I personally like this, but your taste might be totally different than mine. So the first still is how it looked with just the overhead light. Now we can look at what it looks like when there's one light right in the center. And now when we have the center light and the corner light, and now you can see it as I'm speaking when the two corner lights are on and there is no center light. Alright, so we're done with the lighting rule. Almost. They all intertwine. That's really important for you guys to hopefully realize. Everything kind of leads to the other and everything affects the other. So the next step is actually talking about the background. As you guys can see, I have quite a full background, full of stuff, and you don't need that per se, but you do want something interesting in your background. Many times I watch streamers that will have a completely empty background and it'll be just one random picture on a big blank wall. That doesn't look bad, but it's just kind of boring and it blends and it doesn't really pop the way that you want. You want you to be able to pop versus the background, but the background to still be interesting. So going back to the last rule we talked about, lighting is important. If you have the right lighting in the background, you can get even nicer looking lighting for yourself without actually changing any of the lights. Let me show you what it looks like when I actually turn on a few lights in the background. I'll actually do it in a time lapse so you guys can see that I'm not doing anything except for turning on some lights. Let me move my chair so it's not in the way and let's get this going. Okay. That light isn't super noticeable, but I do like how it adds a glimmer to the things in my collection shelf. And the green light, hard to aim backwards. I just really like because it's a burst of color. Now here's my secret light that I use that I find really changes things. You want to add a light with color. Color will really pop in the background without distracting from you because you're using natural light on yourself and the background is a very unnatural color. It adds a nice contrast to make you pop out even more from the background. Now, that green is one of the lights that I use. Here's the other. I have a red light that I use. The clamp light that I showed you, it's another clamp light because I used to use two. The one clamp light I actually clamped up high with a red bulb. As you can see, that makes things look more interesting. Now when I'm sitting here, I tend to pop more versus everything else. So now you can see there's a bit of green on one side, there's a bit of red on the other side, and things look more interesting. Now, of course, I went above and beyond and I ended up getting way more lights. So let me show you what it looks like when I turn them all on. And there we go. All my lights are on. My background looks good. And that's it, guys. That's the big secret. That's all it takes to make your live stream look good. I have an interesting background. I'm well lit. I fiddled with the settings. And I'm just using a basic webcam, not a $2,000 DSLR like you see the big guys using. You don't need it, as I've just shown you. But before we end the video off, let me show you real quickly what my settings are to make my image pop. Because right now I haven't added any of it, and I want you guys to see it firsthand so you guys don't sit there wondering why it looked so good when I added certain features and it didn't look so good for you. So let me open up the screen here. There we go. And I'm going to open up my webcam settings and configure my video, which is underneath. You can't really see, but right there, you just click configure video. And then it brings up your webcam settings. So here are my webcam settings. I've obviously turned off autofocus because you don't want that. Now look at what the webcam would have done had I left it automatic despite all these things. And this is why it was important to show you this step first. Look how bad it looks. It doesn't look good at all. It's overblown. It looks really nasty because it's trying to focus for the background and not for me. It's also trying to focus for the black and not the pale skin that I've got. So again, turn off all your auto settings. I personally like to turn my gain down quite a bit to keep the image as clear as possible. I turn down the exposure enough that when I move, it's not super blurry, but not so it's super dark either, because you don't want an image that looks like this. This looks boring. You want a bit of brightness in it. I don't really mess with any of these three because it's in the settings and I can't really control it fine-tune wise. White balance, I didn't speak about that really, but here's the thing, depending on your lights, depending on the bulbs you're using, your white balance is going to be different than mine, so don't copy mine. tweak it, guys. Look at how it looks on your screen. Play with what you like, because if your lights are really orange, you're going to be more down here where the image looks more blue for me. If your lights are really blue, you're going to be up here where the image looks really orangey yellow for me. So my lights are fairly neutral. I try to stick near the middle. And that's that part. And then we'll quickly add the filter, which we spoke about as well. With the settings I had when I last made that step, when I spoke about that step last, look how much the image pops. There we go. That's it, guys. If you look at my contrast, 0.04, barely any extra contrast added. Saturation, 0.63. Not even one full step of contrast, of saturation, just a slight bit. And you can see the difference from that to this. It just pops. It makes it look nicer. And there we go, guys. I hope that you guys were able to learn a lot from this video. You guys can make your videos look great. You guys can make your streams look amazing and really stand out versus everybody else. You hopefully learned something from this and realize that it's not black magic. I was a photographer for 10 years, so a lot of this just came naturally to me. But I know a lot of people out there, this is the first time you've ever even used the settings on your webcam or tried to videotape yourself. So just take a little bit of extra time, fiddle with your settings, try to get a few lights, and your webcam can look great. You don't need to go out and spend all that money. You can save a lot of money and put it towards what really matters, the games you're going to be playing, the other hardware you need in order to be able to stream. I'll talk about sound on a later video. I'll talk about any other little things like using a green screen, which can be fairly complicated if you don't know what you're doing. I'll do that all later on. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned. Leave a like if you liked what you saw. Leave a dislike if you didn't like what you saw. I hope you guys subscribe, and I'll try to make more videos like this to try to get you guys to understand what it's like to be on my side of things, where I have to think of all these things every time I go live. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Discord, and also follow me on Twitch, because I stream on there. I try to stream every evening, guys, and I hope I see you guys at my next live stream. Also, if you have any other advice, put it down in the description or in the comments below, because it's always great to share. If you think you know everything, you probably are missing a lot of other things that you could probably take advantage of. So if I miss something, put it down there. If you have any other questions, put it down there. I'll try to get back to you as much as I can. And if there's enough questions, I could even make a second part to this video. Guys, I look forward to seeing you, and hopefully I can see your live streams looking just as good as this, and we can all grow in this awesome community. All right, guys, take care. See you later. Bye-bye.